From the North Beach Podcast Company in partnership with TSN, welcome to episode 10 of season 2 of the Ray and Greg's Hockey Podcast. We're recording this Wednesday morning around 9:35 Eastern time, Ray, which means 6:30 Pacific. Man, You're an early riser, right? Like, what do you just bounce out of bed, brush your teeth, grab a cup of coffee, and go right into the office? Is that how it works?
Yeah, usually. Today, however, I wouldn't say it was bouncing out of bed. It was like, snooze button, roll, 10 minutes, snooze button again. So 2 snooze buttons today, which never happens.
Wow.
Never happens. So I wouldn't say I was, I usually don't get to the alarm. I'm kind of like, I got to wake up at 6:30. I wake up at 6:15. I just kind of always do. Today, just, I'm a little dozy. So maybe like you could carry the first 10 minutes of this thing till I wake up. How about that?
Okay. Well, should we warm you up here a little bit? Because as we were doing our preamble prior to hitting record here, you're sitting in your beautiful office. My office doesn't have a sofa. Yours apparently does, sitting area in the office. So that speaks to how large it is. But we were having a friendly debate. I'm sitting in my home studio / office in front of my wonderful built-in cabinets. I've got a custom-made desk. I'm just dropping everything now, right? And living the good life here. Your office doesn't have a desk. So
no.
I'm wondering if our podcast listeners and viewers would call it an office. Is it an office if it doesn't have a desk in the office or a work table, something that you can work at?
In my house, yes.
Okay.
I work when I'm working. I work at the kitchen table. I like being out where everybody is. It's not like I'm doing medical work, where the concentration has to be, that I'm trying to find out more about a cell. No, I'm not. I'm breaking down somebody's game, and I'm watching it on TV anyway. But I watch the games in here. It's kind of like a sitting room and a chair and a couch and. We, when Cammie and I watch a show, we watch it in here most often.
See,
it is an office.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, look, you use it for whatever you use it for. I mean, you've explained it's a viewing area. You're watching your games. You're taking your notes. You're doing all those sorts of things.
I don't. But the reason it makes it an office though, Dregs, is because if I come in and close the door, then it's quiet.
Right.
So that makes it an office for me.
But that's the part that surprises me because you're a man who doesn't like distraction or doesn't seem to be. When you're in a zone doing something, you don't want banging pots and all of those things. So I'm a bit surprised that when you're doing your research and doing everything that you do, drilling down and Ray and Dregs, that you don't do it in the quiet confines of the office without a desk.
The drilling down on the Ray and Drake stuff, that's after everybody goes to bed.
Oh, very good.
It is very quiet. Trust me.
Hey, did you know, of course you did, because Ray and Dregs tweeted it, 25th anniversary of Happy Gilmore on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Like, and the fact that Adam Sandler recreated the crazy tee shot, which so many your buddies are probably like this too. Although you play with a higher caliber of golfer, and they're probably not just going to blow a tee shot like that. But
we all tried it.
Yeah, see, I play with buffoons, and normally they're 6 Bud Light deep by this time, and somebody's got to try it. And it's actually kind of shocking. I don't know if you find the same in your group. How many times you get away with it where it actually works. Now, you may not hit it quite as straight or as far or any of that, but it's remarkable hand-eye that you can actually pull it off. And it looked like Adam Sandler was able to pull it off on the 25th anniversary of Happy Gilmore.
Yeah, two things. One, I like that Happy was able to do that under tournament conditions. Can you imagine the pressure that he was hitting that shot with? I love that movie. It's so ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
I really got a kick out of it. One year, I'm gonna get early 2000-ish. Cammie and I went to Cabo in Mexico, and we go to this kind of like a restaurant that had like all the chairs were out on the beach.
Yeah.
Right. So it was a seafood place. It was awesome. So we go to this place and they had like a entertainment thing. And I look over and Shooter McGavin's there. I'm like, are you kidding me? So I kind of like skulk my way over there at some point. Him and his wife were there and they looked like they were having a good time. So I quickly introduced myself and said, hey, I got to tell you, I'm not going to bug you, but I loved your movie. And he was really actually quite happy to talk about it. But I still don't know his name. He's just Shooter.
Shooter.
Yeah.
It's funny you say that because as I'm, kind of like, you know what, in the opening of the podcast, we should talk about the anniversary Happy Gilmore. And obviously I just referenced Adam Sandler. I have no idea what Shooter McGavin's name is.
I couldn't get it.
I don't care enough to research to find out who it is. But his response to the Adam Sandler tee shot was tremendous.
See you on the 9th green at 9. Shooter.
Shooter. Oh, that's awesome. You got through Valentine's Day. I got through Valentine's Day, thanks to our friends at Legaro.com Jewelers. Holly doesn't care about this stuff, so I get a bit of a free pass when it comes to Valentine's Day. But did you enjoy it? Did you step up to the plate? Did you get what you needed to get done?
Yeah, I think so. Although, like, we didn't. It's not like we had. I don't know if we would have had a grand plan in normal times. Like, would we have gone out for dinner or anything like that? I don't know if we would have. We would have done something a little special, but we went for a hike. Just told the kids we'll be back in 90 minutes. See ya. And so we went for a hike. The trails we live in a beautiful place. So we went up and just kind of hung out and walked around up in the trails and spent a little time. Oh, I think I was saving this for later, but we are getting a dog.
Come on.
Yes. Now a small dog, but 20 pounds, I think, or so, but we're, not one of your tiny machines, but Cavapoo is the name of the dog.
Oh, a designer dog. So it's a cross.
Geez, you took that. You really put that together quickly. I'm impressed. Yes. So, we're I think March the 7th, we make our final selection out of the litter, and now we're just debating names. And
good luck with that. That's hard. It's hard because they're all wonderful, right? You want to take them all home, and then you've got to zero it down.
Well, we can look on the website. There's like 6 or 7 of them, and you can get periodic updates. And I think we've zeroed in on one, but we'll see. The name is becoming a little bit of an issue here, so we're in a couple of different camps on this. Riley likes 1, Reese likes 3, Cammie likes about 2. She wants one that you can shorten down. We're like, well, why don't we just pick a short name? Why do you got to have the name Frederick and name him Fred? Like, why do you got to do that? So we're getting close on the name too.
What was the Steve Martin movie? The Jerk.
Oh yeah, The Jerk. I brought that up to the kids the other day. They thought it was awesome. Steve Martin's dog was Shithead. And so they didn't think that was going to be the name, but I said, see, and Mom could shorten the name too.
Oh, by the way, Rob Gray is chimed in here. It's Christopher McDonald. That's who Shooter McGavin is. See, he's actually listening. He doesn't just hit the buttons. He listens to what we talk about.
See, that surprises me because a lot of times when we have our Zoom meetings, I'm not sure if he's listening or not, or if he's just sitting over there. What do you think? You think he's listening?
Yeah, he listens. No, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. So one thing that you're not going to like about having a dog, well, there's a few things, but the good far outweighs the bad. Trust me when I tell you. I mean, the messes and all of that. I mean, the training, that you get over that in time. So the dog takes a squirt on the floor, big deal. You clean it up and you move on. Tiny, we've finally trained her out of it. but we've got a Shih Tzu, Fritz, who's 14 years old. Tiny follows Fritz first thing in the morning in the backyard. And as soon as Fritz does its business, Tiny is on it. And if I'm not there, guess what happens?
Come on.
Tiny has early breakfast. It happens a lot. Dogs do it a lot. I know, it's ridiculous.
Well, okay, yeah, but you got 2 dogs. So like, that's not going to happen here. We have one dog.
Sometimes they eat their own.
Well, this is news to me.
I'm just telling you, man. Dog ownership has its trials and its tribulations. Yeah, well, it's a lot of weird stuff.
We had been talking about this for a while, and I just sense what's going to happen here is a lot of the mundane chores of the dog.
Yeah,
that's me.
Yeah, that's on you.
Yeah, the kids old, but the kids promise they'll walk the dog and stop it.
Yeah, but you'll actually find that relaxing, borderline therapeutic, right? As long as you do need some training, you want your dog to get along with other dogs. Obviously, they have to be friendly to other people. Otherwise, the walks are terrifying because
they would be a chore then, right?
Yeah, it becomes an issue, but you're not going to have to worry about that. Well, that's big news in the Ferraro house.
So we're about a month away from dog ownership expanding the family.
Oh, well, then we've got at least 2, maybe 3 episodes ahead. I think everybody should tweet to @RayandRiggs a name suggestion for the Ferraro puppy.
Sure.
Wrong names only, or you're
No, I mean, it would be nice to, it could be both. You could put a wrong and a right.
Mm.
Like, I'd like to, maybe somebody's got a great idea. Although the dog name, it's like the naming your kids. Like, it's personal to you, and what makes sense to you doesn't make sense to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say we got 3 or 4 that are kind of separating from the pack.
Is Lassie one of them?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, Lassie is not, like, it's not, Lassie's that would be a bigger dog.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a smaller dog. So,
yeah.
You got to think smaller names.
All right, buddy. We've got Mike Peca, Michael Peca. He's a fierce NHL player that you know well in terms of playing against him. He's coming up. What's that?
Never liked it.
No.
Playing against him. No. He checked too well. He skated too well. And he was a devastating hitter. Yeah. And he would come out of left field. And he was not a comfortable guy to be on the ice against. And
how was he with his stick?
They also had those freight trains running around behind him. I mean, that was a tough team.
Yeah.
In Buffalo. And they were a pack. Like, that was not a comfortable place to play.
No. How was he with his stick? I mean, back then you could hack and slash and pretty much get away with anything as long as you didn't break the guy's wrist. Or if you broke his wrist, sometimes that was okay.
I don't recall anybody getting suspended really much back then.
Yeah.
I would say he won the Selke twice.
Yeah. Yeah.
He would have never been in the running for the Lady Byng. He was a hard competitor.
All right. Well, he's going to join us. It's 26 years from the infamous Timo Selanne hit when he was with the Vancouver Canucks. I believe it was February 9th, 1995. And both of us have watched that hit on YouTube again, just in preparation for this. And for anyone who's listening,
that hit was a day late. It wasn't like whether it was 1.2 seconds or that was a day late.
Yeah.
And Teemu flipped straight over, like it was a bad hit. Did he get suspended for it? I don't think so.
No. Well, maybe by his own team. I think they basically hid him in the dressing room so that he survived the rest of the game because that one turned into an absolute gong show.
Yeah.
Winnipeg, Vancouver, for those who are too young to remember, but it's worth a dial-up. I'm sure we'll post it on the Ray and Drake social channels at some point. So Mike Peca is joining us. Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co. I'm wondering about the money exchange in the Toronto Maple Leafs loss to the Ottawa Senators. And maybe that's where we start with headlines, the crazy North Division, everything that's going on there. But I mean, holy smokes, Toronto would have been heavily favored going into that game against Ottawa on Monday. 5-1 lead. Nick Paul? Yeah, scored with 9 seconds to go in the second period. A shorty, which flipped the switch for DJ Smith and the Ottawa Senators. So I'm wondering what sort of gambling influence that might have had on the line or the payout for Coolbet.
Yeah, the other thing is, like, there were so many guys scoring. There had to be a couple of weird combinations of goals for the players that would have paid out for sure.
Yeah. So we'll talk to Chris Abbott about that. While we're into headlines, let's back it up a little bit and just reflect on this crazy North Division as described. I mean, what is it? Is it the immense scoring talent that we can see in Draisaitl and McDavid and Matthews and Marner and go down the list there? And, the particular line in Montreal with Drouin, Nick Suzuki, and Josh Anderson started gangbusters. Is it shoddy goaltending? I mean, maybe you could make that case with 3 of the 7 teams in Canada, or is it just a combination of stuff? I mean, what are you seeing at this point?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of a lot of things. So Vancouver started, and for whatever reason, their game just fell apart.
Yeah.
And their goaltending wasn't great, but that wasn't really the problem. I mean, they were giving up buckets of goals. They played Montreal 5 times, and it was like practice for Montreal. They were scoring at will. Ottawa went through that stretch. They were giving up 5 goals a game. Ottawa has, I think their goals against average is over 4.
Yeah.
So whoever's playing them, right, all those goals stay in the Northern Division, and it's 4 minimum a game. It's crazy how many goals they've given up. So 2 days ago, 6-5 Winnipeg, Edmonton, 6-5 Toronto and Ottawa, or Ottawa, Toronto. So you look at the leading scores. McDavid's got 30, Draisaitl's got 26, Marner's got 23, right? So they're all sitting right at the very top. 7 of the top 8 scorers are from the North. 6 of the top 7 D and scorers are from the North, and the 6 top goal scorers. Brock Besser's got 11 goals already, in a rebound season for him. So goaltending, defensive play that's kind of flopped all over the place. And while lots of the other divisions have these 2-1, 1-0 games quite frequently, there's been very few in the North. And I like the goals, so I'm okay with it, but it is pretty crazy to watch for sure.
It is, and I thought Paul Maurice going into that game against the Oilers really laid it out well, saying that, the goalies hate it. The defense probably doesn't love it a whole bunch. The coaches, managers hate it. The only people out there that love it are the forwards, right? They'll swap those offensive chances all day long because that's candy. I mean, what that's about, playing in the 80s.
Nothing was funnier than hearing the coach say, "We can't trade chances with them." Why not? Why not?
Oh, yes, we can.
The only team that we would not ever think that with really was Pittsburgh.
Right.
I remember one night we lost in overtime, and we're on the bus, and I was with the Islanders, and they're, and we're talking, man, we outplayed them. We had as many chances as them. And Glenn Healy said something to the effect, when we get a 3-on-2 or 3-on-1, it's us. When they get one, it's Yager and Francis and Mullen and and Lemieux, and it's not the same thing, guys. We can't do this.
Thanks for the confidence, Heels.
He just took a look around at our room, and he was right. We could all go, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. So if you go back to Ottawa and Toronto earlier in the week, and that just kind of gives me something to jump off of, because early in that hockey game, it looked like Austin Matthews and Jumbo Joe making his return scores a goal, and Mitch Marner with his creativity. It looked like they were going to have a field day against the Ottawa Senators. The point parade was in full effect. Matthews with a pair. Again, Jumbo scores in his return. You know, I'm struggling to find ways to explain the type of season that Matthews is having. Right now, he would trade those goals for a win, obviously, and you know he probably didn't play as well as he needed to play defensively in the second half of that hockey game. About a week ago on the podcast, you said that he deserves strong consideration for MVP, right? And I don't think that's changed based on what you've seen to
He's
this
got 13
point.
goals.
You know,
it's like he's playing in bantam.
But his celebrations to me are tremendous in that they're so understated, right? Like he scored his second the other day. I mean, the reason he celebrated his first goal was because of the pass that Thornton made, right? And he gave credit after the period to Marner for holding that puck for another second and a half to buy enough time to separate so he could get the puck to Thornton, and then Thornton slides it over in a beauty pass to Austin Matthews. He was celebrating because he was enjoying the moment that he was having with 43-year-old Joe Thornton. He wasn't celebrating because he had just scored a goal. The next goal he scored, he kind of went, all right, well, just another goal.
See, I thought when he's super understated. As you say, but I wish the guys would celebrate a little bit when they score. Because I don't know if you go back and you look at some of the old highlights from way back, and the guys score and they like pat the guy on the ass or tap him on the shin pads as they skate by him. They go back to center, and I like it. It's fun. Chris Tamer, we used to play with in Atlanta. He used to call it the fun bunch when you get together. He's like, fun bunch time, and so we'd be in there. Like it was fun to score, and so. But when he scored, my impression was, okay, it's 5-1.
Yeah,
you know, it's awesome. We score. You know, I scored. It's great, but it's 5-1. Like when they scored to make it 5-2 on that shorthanded goal, not for a second, Dregs, did I think that game was in danger. Right. I'm just like, yeah, that was a crappy goal to give up.
Yeah.
And then they give up another one 40 seconds into this third, and it's game on. But man, he is having an amazing start. And you know, the 13 goals are one thing. Brock Besser sits there, as I mentioned, with 11. There's a lot of guys that are going to put up some pretty good goal per game numbers in this division. Because I don't see it. It's not going to change that it's all of a sudden going to be 1-0. It might change and get 4-3 or, you know, maybe 3-2, maybe, but I don't see it.
I want to get your thoughts on Galchenyuk in just a moment. Then we'll flip over to Vancouver and Francesco Aquilini, the owner of the Vancouver Canucks, coming out publicly in support of Jim Benning and Travis Green in just a moment. But before we leave the Leafs, and they've got the 3-game set this week against the Ottawa Senators. I mean, they're a far better team, no question about that. But did you see enough in that collapse on Monday for you to pause and go, they're not a cup contender. They're not ready yet to be a cup contender. I'm talking about the Maple Leafs, obviously.
Yeah, not quite to that extent, because I also put greater weight in the 8 games before, where they really didn't give up anything. You know, they went through Calgary and they've played Edmonton, and those were 2-1 and 3-2 games. And those have to matter. You can't just look at the one game that was a collapse and say that's the way it is. What concerns me, I guess, if I were to look at the Leafs from a cup contender status is, and I know this is not their lineup, they're missing Wayne Simmons. I think Nick Robertson will have some role. You got to remember he's 19 or 20 years old still, right? But I do think, you know, as per Galchenyuk, that tells us they're probably looking to make a little bit of a move somewhere down the line. Like their third line the other day was Mikheyev, Engvall, and Kerfoot. And that doesn't strike me as a third line on a Stanley Cup winning team. And maybe that's nitpicking, but you have to nitpick if you're going to win. The second part is, at some point, Dregs, and I don't think this is even a debate, is that Nylander and Tavares have to be able to score with some regularity, to have some more impact on the game, because this has been, you know, Tavares doesn't have an even strength goal. That's, you know, what's that, 14 games right now?
Yeah.
15. Nylander's got 2 goals in his last 14. Like that can't be if they're going to be a contender. It's like any team. You take two of your best forwards and they don't score for you, well, then you're not the team you think you are.
So did you have a winger that, like coaches will often talk about tandems, right? Rather than a line, they'll say, the center and this winger, they just click. So we leave them together. Whoever plays the other wing, that's great. And I see that in Matthews and Marner, obviously. And the reason I'm asking who that winger was for you is because, and this is just my tiny little pea hockey brain here, looking at Tavares, and I can see the thought bubble, and the fact that I don't think he loves playing with Willie Nylander. He's got to like Zach Hyman because, the one thing they haven't successfully done yet is clone Hyman so he can play on all four lines. But he's a workhorse there. But does that make sense to you? I mean, was there a winger that you just clicked with? And could that be part of the issue for Tavares? Is that the chemistry with Nylander just isn't?
Well, so chemistry, of course, is just undefinable. It's like it. Lots of times the line goes up and you go to practice and you're like, man, I'm excited to play on this line. And then you get into the game and you're like, it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. And there are sometimes great players just cannot play together. Like not good players, great players. You put them together and it should work and it doesn't. I had a couple wingers. When I was in Hartford, I loved playing with John Anderson. Man, he could pass. When I was on the island, I had a line, but with Benoit Hogue and Pat Flatley, but I loved that Flatley did just this corner work was unreal. Hoagie and I just fit. Like we just fit together. And then when I got to Atlanta, it was Andrew Brunette. I mean, Brew and I think we would lull everybody to sleep as we were going up the ice. But man, we just had a real sense of how we played, and that fit with how he played. So I don't think you're off there, Dregs. I don't see the fit as easily with Nylander and Tavares as you do with Marner and Matthews. Like sometimes it just fits. Don't forget when Tavares had 47 goals, he was playing with Marner.
Yeah.
So that's something to think about because that good teams can think about. When you're a struggling team, that's not even an option. You don't have these options. So, but I do think Hyman going to that line gives them what they don't have at 5-on-5, and that should allow them to extend their shifts in the offensive zone to create more when they're not on the rush, because that seems to be right now where they're most dangerous. Remember last year, Nylander had a terrific year, and he scored a pile, the majority of his goals from inside the hash marks in front of the net. He's got to get back in there. Tavares, that's where he does his work, best work. And I think in concert with Hyman, that means that line can work a little better there.
Yeah. Well, we'll get on to the Vancouver Canucks, but I mean, the fact that, that second line and third line just aren't generating.
There's still work to do, man. There's still work to do there.
And that fuels the speculation of trade, right? I mean, every team would like to add another top six forward. I mean, it's ridiculous. Sure. Like adding a top four defenseman. The Maple Leafs are no different. I don't see it urgently, but I think we can appreciate why a piece would help, right?
Here's one thing to think about, though, is so that deadline comes up in April.
2 months, yeah. The
time we might really have to look at it is the 2 to 3 weeks before the deadline.
Right.
Like for teams, for players that might come into Canada. Yeah. It's like that. Yeah. That might be their own deadline to say, hey, look, we got to get him here. He's going to sit here in a hotel for 2 weeks. Then it's going to be a week at least. Like, look what happened to Pierre-Luc Dubois. He came here, sat here for 2 weeks, and now he's hurt. And that's not unpredictable, I don't think.
No, you're right. And I would expect that the 7 Canadian teams, because the restrictions are softening a little bit, knock on wood, that that's going to be a good thing. Certainly in Ontario, they're softening a little bit, depending on your region. But the hope is, anticipation to some degree, that the Canadian government will lift that 14-day quarantine so that they can go back to the training camp quarantine of 7 days or 4 consecutive negative tests. So maybe that becomes a factor, and that'll encourage trades, because what Kevin Shoveldayoff and the Winnipeg Jets had to go through with Pierre-Luc Dubois was torturous. It really was. And then shocking, the guy gets hurt, right? After sitting in a hotel room for 14 days. We got to move along, but what do you make of Francesco Aquilini coming out? Because again, living in the market, he's not an owner. Not many owners are vocal, right? They don't make public statements specific to their club very often. And Aquilini, at least with the media, is pretty elusive. I think that's fair to say. So he comes out publicly and says, hey, I'm paraphrasing. I don't have the quote in front of me, but he threw his support behind his general manager and his head coach. Now, traditionally, we look at that and go, oh, it's the dreaded vote of confidence. I'm not applying that here, but did it do anything to calm the market in Vancouver at all?
Well, it gave everybody something else to talk about for a few days.
Yeah.
Right. And what does it mean? And why did he come out in this manner? He's not a public speaker. Francesco Aquilini does not do press conferences very often, or quite frankly, very well. That's not a strength of his. So he throws his support out there, and that's great. But it's great to say, but in practice, the coach is on the last year of his contract. They weren't able to sign him per management restrictions. The GM has his support now, but they've got so much dead money on the cap that they they're 20 million under the cap with players that aren't there. So I think it matters in that it kind of throws everybody into a different headspace.
Yeah.
But I don't really think it does anything. If they don't make the playoffs, how are they going to bring back the same management staff? Like how are they going to do that? It would be 7 years, and I think 6 of them you've missed the playoffs, and that just doesn't make sense.
Any thoughts on the whole Arizona situation, or because it's so convoluted? And look, full marks to Katie Strang of The Athletic for doing the deep dive on this. Not to dig too deep into it, because it is a complex and complicated story. I'd invite anybody watching or listening to check it out on the Athletic website, because it is an interesting read, and man, exhaustively done in terms of investigative reporting by Katie. I guess what becomes the norm about this is that it's the Arizona Coyotes, right? And it's just one more thing. This team just can't seem to get out of its way. And I think the expectation from the league's perspective, when they brought the Marulo family on board, a wealthy family, by the way, published net worth of $2 billion with a B. I'm sure the National Hockey League Commissioner's Office thought, let's get these people in. We'll have to shepherd them through a process, because you don't just get the keys to an NHL franchise and run it flawlessly. So they've made their share of mistakes, has been detailed in this report. But is that your takeaway? Is it similar to mine, that you read it and you'd like to go, well, that shouldn't happen, or that can't happen. I can't believe that happened. But in the case of the Arizona Coyotes, you're sitting there reading it going, yeah, that makes sense. I can understand that this would happen there.
Well, I think I was, of course you're not there, but I think I was really surprised to read it in such detail. Well, in any detail, really, because we just had Shane Doan on.
Yeah.
And Shane is just a wonderful person. And he talked about what they were trying to do and related it to what was going on in Tampa Bay. What the owner Jeff Vinik had done there in Tampa Bay, and really revitalized the downtown area, not just built a rink or took over a rink and a hockey team. So I guess I had in my mind that was the direction, but I'm reading all this other stuff that's not the direction. And I think it's pretty clear. I mean, there was a time when leadership style of, you suck, you got to get going. That's the way we were coached. That's the way it was in the offices and in the way businesses were run. It's not that way anymore, nor should it be. And when you think of it, if your boss is yelling at you all the time, or is really harsh on you, how are you going to be at your best? You're just not.
No.
And so of the things that stood out, I think I was buffaloed into thinking, hey, things are really changing and really going to be different in Arizona than they've been for, I don't know, forever. Because I think I want them to be. I like going to Phoenix to do a game. I like being in that area. I think that I think it would be a cool thing if that team can work there. But man, you're right, Dregs. It's one after another, and Katie detailed it. I mean, right down to as much degree as you can.
All right, let's wrap headlines up with a smile. At least I found it smile worthy. Patrik Laine comes out of his benching, comes out of all of the negative press and analysis that surrounded his benching and whatnot. Has a couple of big games, to be fair. One where, he fights in defense of a teammate, scores a beautiful goal with that patented release of Patrik Laine. And fairly soon after the game, in the post-game interview, he analyzes the goal as textbook top cheese. Like, automatically, if you haven't spent 5 minutes around Patrik Laine, look, I get it. We're fortunate that we have. But that is what I love about this kid the most, is it's cocky, it's arrogant, it's a lot of things that you don't love in some pro athletes. But man, this is what keeps the heartbeat strong in Patrik Laine, is that he's calling it like he sees it. And in his head, that's textbook top cheese. Doesn't get much better than that.
No, and he's right, though. It is. We'd all like to shoot it like that, shoot it off the bar and in from 30 feet like that. How many guys can score in the game like that?
Yeah.
Like maybe 3 or 4. I don't know. Not many. Confidence does not waver for him. And now the fight, okay, the fight's the fight, but I don't want a guy like him fighting.
I agree.
Not in today's world, man. What if he bangs his hand on a helmet and he breaks a finger and he's out for 6 more weeks? Man, they appreciate the effort, appreciate you protecting your teammates. We got other guys to do that. Just please score like you are.
Yeah,
that would be my message.
You're right, and there is injury history already this year, right? Whether it was in defense of Kyle Connor in the first game of the Winnipeg Jets where he yanked an oblique, or maybe when he whiffed on the overtime winner before scoring the goal, he pulled a muscle. Anyway, point being that it's great that you're wanting to defend your teammate, but maybe let somebody else do it.
Yeah. He also took a couple on the chin there in the fight.
Yeah.
And he's probably fortunate that the guy he's fighting, Brandon Hagel, is a lot smaller.
Yeah.
And not somebody of his size. I mean,
how many times?
I don't know. That's the danger of that.
How many times does it take before you learn that you don't want to be punched in the face again?
For me, once.
Yeah, me too. Although I broke my nose 4 times. So the first 3, I didn't learn.
Well, I've told the story, I know before, that my first year I got in a fight with Steve Thomas.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I didn't even know what happened, but he's my size. I mean, how bad can it be? Halfway through the fight, I realized he's the middleweight champ of the world, and he's just pounding my face. And so I go in and I'm, I got to get looked at, and something chipped in one of my teeth in the back. And Dave Babbage comes in, funny man. And he's like, hey, Thomas is outside. And I go, well, what's he doing there? And he goes, he wants to know if you're okay. He thought he killed you. So, that was about it for me. I'm like, I don't need to be doing this. Do you know who my last fight was with?
No.
Sheldon Keefe.
Seriously?
Yeah, it wasn't much of a fight. It's on YouTube, but yeah. So he must have been in his first year. I was certainly in my last.
Wow, we have to get him to explain. And how'd you do? Was it one of those where you just tied up and?
That's how I always fought, but he landed a couple. And then I think the announcer says in the clip, I'm not sure what Ferraro was doing there. Hell, I was playing for the Thrashers. I was frustrated. I don't know.
That is true.
That was my last fight.
Hey, Sheldon Keefe, claim to fame. Fights Ray Ferraro.
His claim to fame is he's coaching the
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, that would be it.
We'll tie it up with this. A good friend of yours, former teammate Kelly Buchberger. It was during an off season, or I don't even remember where it was, but I mean, come on, Bucky was a tough dude. Always fought above his weight class. You know, he didn't pick or choose. He just was. He was a gamer, right? So we're on a beach somewhere in Saskatchewan. It's hard to find a beach in Saskatchewan, but it's at Carlton Trail near Jeff Hodgers. It's late at night. We've probably been overserved, and he wants to wrestle. So I'm the only idiot who goes, yeah, I'll wrestle. Why not? This seems like a really good idea. So it starts pretty calm, as they all do. And I somehow I managed to get him into like a fireman's carry, right? So I've got him on my shoulder. And Kelly's a good sized lad, like, you know, much bigger than I am. And anyway, it pisses him off. So he, you know, put him down, his wires cross, and he literally looks at me, he goes, fists? And the word doesn't even come out of his mouth right. And I don't have a second to go, no. And he whap, just breaks my nose for at least the fourth time in my life.
At least he asked.
I know, but I'm already working. I'm working in media at this time. Like, I don't think I was on TV, thank God, but I had like two black eyes and a broken nose. I was like, what happened? It's a stupid story. But anyway, thankfully, that was the last time I broke my face. Compliments of Bucky.
Well, I think it was really nice. He gave you a heads up just before he hit you, right?
All right. Our interview today with Mike Peca is brought to you by our pals at Coolbet.co. Chris from Coolbet will join us a bit later. He'll talk about NHL odds, and perhaps we'll look back at that kind of weird Toronto Maple Leafs Ottawa Senators game at the beginning of the week. As always, you must be 19, and Coolbet reminds you, stay cool and bet responsibly. All right, joined now by Mike Peca. Mike, let's talk about the transition of your career here. How do you go from the general manager and director of hockey operations for the OJHL, so that's junior A hockey here in Canada, or in your case with the Junior Sabres, to a development coach with the Washington Capitals? That seems like a pretty big jump from coaching and managing at one level into a development and coaching environment at the National Hockey League level.
Yeah, especially considering the general managing and coaching the junior team was like 8 years ago itself. So, you know, it is a bit of a giant leap, I guess, if you look at it that way. But, you know, I started kind of get my nose in, you know, exploring opportunities the last little while. And, you know, over the last few years, I did, you know, with the Sabres, I was in Rochester once a week working with the centermen. So I had some access and, you know, work with the professional level. But I think, you know, I think it's just a lot of things made this a real good fit. Obviously, Peter Laviolette coached me in Long Island, knew a lot about me, and we've kept in touch over the years. And, yeah, and obviously with the unique circumstances surrounding the season and COVID and taxi squads, they wanted to free up their coaching staff a little bit. So I come in and I'm, you know, basically running, you know, optional practices on off days and taxi squad on game days and other days. And, you know, but now as every day goes by, I'm getting a little bit more responsibility. You know, now Pete wants me to get in and do a little bit more game day video. You know, I'm responsible for the centermen, so I'm glad they had a better night last night. You know, so I'll do a lot of pre-scout video and analysis on them and see if we can get them to improve as we move along.
What's the biggest learning curve for you, Michael, in doing that as the role increases for you?
You know what? So over the years, I always figured the biggest learning curve is going to be the video, you know, learning how to get the video and be real fluid with it. And the good thing is here we've got two phenomenal video guys. A lot of the stuff's already pretty much cut. The stuff I do doesn't take a lot of time. It's a really, really simple system. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. You know, when I retired in the end of the 08-09 season in Columbus, Ken Hitchcock and Scott Housen wanted me to join Hitch's staff at the time. And, you know, it wasn't a right time for me. I mean, I was stepping away from the game of hockey, not because I didn't feel I could play anymore. I did it because I needed some stability with my son and my kids. And my son had been to 6 schools and 6 years with, going from my last year in Long Island to a lockout to Edmonton and Toronto. I mean, it was year after year. So for me, it was more of a family decision, but always want to get my nose back into it, and I'm glad I did.
When you're coaching the taxi guys, I think because that's so unique this year, how do you keep them interested? Is it easy, or are there some days that you're going to find that I got to find something a little more creative to keep them engaged?
No, absolutely. I mean, one of the first things I told them is, you're all phenomenal athletes. You're all going to be in pretty good shape. And we were going to do a lot of stuff to make sure, we get our heart rate up and we're in good shape. I said, the toughest challenge for you guys is going to be mentally. You've got to be ready to maybe see 1 game a month, 2 games a month. And that's not easy to go through. And, I shared with them my experience of, the 2000-2001 season when I missed an entire season with Buffalo. And I had to find the right rhythm in my weekly routine where, I ended up playing the Spangler Cup, ended up playing the World Championship. And the physical part of it's never the most difficult part. It's the mental part. But it's a great group of guys that I work with. And then, what I try and do in drills is I try and make everything as game-like as possible. Everything's in tight areas. Everything's, it's got some compete to it. And, I added a little thing this week where on game days, I want them to feel like they're coming to the rink to play games. So we do nothing but, really competitive small area games. And, it's red versus white 3-on-3, and try and start building that competitive mindset on game days for them.
You mentioned Peter's got you working more with the centerman, and now you're doing a little more game day stuff. Is there a different way to approach, say, a younger centerman, as opposed to, you got a pretty veteran group in Washington, with Kuznetsov and Backstrom and Eller in particular? Like, how do you approach them with something new? I mean, they probably don't know how good you were or what a great face-off guy you were. And how do you get that message to them without it being like, oh yeah, here's another coach talking to me?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Ray. And actually that was in the forefront of my mind the very first time I met with the centerman. We met in the video room, and the first thing I wanted to do with them, they thought we were going to do a video presentation right away. And I said, no, I said, it's important for me to get to know you guys and you guys to get to know me. So what I'm telling you, I want you to understand that I'm doing it in your best interest, not because I think it'll work, because it's my idea. I want this to be a collaboration. And, oftentimes it's hard to get veteran players to want to do something different. And I think what I found with our group in particular, with Nick Dowd and Lars Ellers, I think there are two more successful guys, because as Ray, as a centerman, guys that I think that just have one thing, guys that just go power backhand seem to be more successful. With Kuznetsov and Backstrom, who like to change it up and do different things, sometimes it's harder to commit to certain face-offs. And they're creative guys, and I'm trying to get them to try and start to do some things differently. And they seem all in. At least initially, they seem to be very eager to hear what I have to say and see what I have to show them, and without really clogging their minds with things to think about at the face-off up, but enough to know the tendencies of the guys they're going against and how they can manipulate that.
I just thought of something as you were talking about that, because you were so strong in several areas of the game, but that one in particular. So you played a big game. Your game was effective all over the place. When you're watching a player developmentally, and now you're going to coach guys, how do you figure out that not everybody's going to be able to play like you? Like, your style of play doesn't fit in every guy. Can you just give a little bit to that guy who's a little different, or do you have to try and revamp your whole message to him?
No, I mean, that's a really good question. And actually part of our, our meetings and discussions this morning on different players, and not just centermen, is, everybody wants to be an offensive player. And I think there's certain guys in our lineup that understand that they're not required to provide a bulk of the offense, but guys that are, especially the younger ones, to understand and just have them really appreciate the value of playing some defensive hockey. It's almost like you pose two questions. Do you want to score? Do you want to win? Well, obviously they want to score, but you're rarely in a scoring position throughout a game. So now the next one is you want to win. So if you want to win, take that extra stride, create a better angle, use your stick. So there's these guys, this staff here is really good at identifying a lot of those little areas to see if we can improve some of our offensive guys to, not become Selke trophy. Like Ovi got on the bus last night and asked if he should get a Selke because of that back check that led to a goal last night. I said, well, it's a good start. I told him it's a good start. But just try to get guys to just buy into that a little bit without really sacrificing what their strengths are.
All right, Mike Peca joining us on the Ray and Dregs podcast. Mike, you mentioned winning a Selke trophy. Well, you won 2 of them as a player in the National Hockey League. And I was sorting through some history earlier this month, and I came across, I guess it was February 9th, 1995. And that was the Peca hit on then Timo Selanne of the Winnipeg Jets and Mike Peca from the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, 26 years ago is a long time, but I watched that hit again this morning, probably a half a dozen times on YouTube. And you and I kind of joked, away from it, but what do you recall of that hit? The aftermath has been well documented. And how many games would you be suspended by George Parros if you had leveled a similar hit in today's NHL?
Well, so it would be a first instance. So there's no repeat offender tag attached to it. But it is the premier goal scorer in the National Hockey League. So if it was today and that happened, I'm guessing I'd probably start with a 6 or 7 game suspension. But I think if I was to go, if the rules back then were like they were now, I don't think there's a contract I could have signed that would have been big enough to prevent me from losing money from suspensions.
Michael, but
the thing is like, so even after that, I mean, it's crazy when you think of concussion protocol and things like that. I remember, reading old articles. So I have this really neat scrapbook that my wife made me for a birthday one time. It's really amazing. And just reading through some articles from my rookie year. And after that, in the newspaper, I think Winnipeg was going to St. Louis. It was either that, because I know when Timo Selanne got in the locker room after the hit, he thought he was in St. Louis. So he was saying, oh, we're in St. Louis. But the most amazing thing is he played their next game like 2 nights later. So it's just, it's incredible how the whole concussion thing has come about. But my second game back, so I fractured my right cheekbone, not bad enough where it needed surgery, but my second game back was in Winnipeg. And when I tell people this story, they can understand there's no iPods to plug into a radio. We didn't even play CDs. We just listened to local rock station, Winnipeg rock station in the locker room. And I just kept hearing these 2 guys say, you got to come down to the arena and watch the Winnipeg Jets kill Mike Peca for what he did to Timo Selanne. And I'm sitting here in the locker room listening, just looking around going, what the hell? So my first shift, I get on the ice. It's a couple minutes into the game to the left of the goalie so I'm in the offensive zone. And, I look over my shoulder, see who Winnipeg's going to put on the ice. And so I see Stefan Quintal come out. I see Dave Manson come out. I see Ty Domi come out and Chris King come out. I'm like, who's going to take the face off? And finally, Dallas Drake comes over the boards. He's the one that takes the face off. And then sure enough, I win it back to Dave Babbage. He pinches in, puck comes around the weak side. Domi passes it out to Dallas Drake. And because I was covering up for Dave Babbage, do I not catch Dallas Drake at his blue line? And he spun in the air like a helicopter all the way to center ice. And then the next thing I know, I was in a turtle position getting punched by like 4 guys. but then that was the end of it. That was the end of it. They didn't do another thing to me the entire game. So, I just remember the words that Tim Hunter gave me when on the ice. He goes, either take it all year or just do something and they may leave you alone.
Well, it's funny because, of course, playing against you, and we certainly heard about the hit. Of course, it wasn't like today where you could just pick it up and see it right away. It took a while for the hit to kind of make its way around. And then you ended up in Buffalo in that huge trade with Alex McGillney. But your reputation continued to grow. Like, people often ask Michael about, was I worried about Rob Ray or, how were you, Brad May? And it was guys like you that terrified someone like me. You're like, that was part of your game though, correct? Like that the ability to deliver the hit, the ability to play, the ability to hassle guys as you were playing, like that was all part of your package.
Yeah, I think in my last couple of years of junior, I started to realize that I had the ability to kind of turn the tide of the game with a hit. And I think it's more difficult in today's game, but back then it seemed to work a little bit more. And then when I got in the NHL, especially my second year with Buffalo, I remember one shift where we're playing Chicago. And so my rookie year in the playoffs, I had a really good series against Chicago. I think we lost 4 straight, but there were 3 overtime games in that series. And I used to go at Chris Chelios nonstop. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for a guy like Chris Chelios. But those are the guys I love to compete against. And then, so I remember it would have been 2 years later in Chicago or in Buffalo. And I remember getting ready for a face-off and Chelios telling Carney, his defense partner, to keep his head up. I saw him look over at me, look over his D partner and say, "Hey, keep your head up this shift." And I'm like, okay, so guys were kind of taking notice. And I knew that once they have that mindset, I knew that I can, maybe take advantage of it in certain opportunities on the ice.
Okay. So you viewed the game one way and, everybody views it their own strengths and, this is what's a good game for me. This is a good game for another guy. What was a good game for you? For me, it was producing offense. And really that was kind of the totality of what I did. What was a good game for Michael Peca?
I think a good game for me. So I'll try and answer it like this. So if I was to have a good game, and I'll try and get to the answer part, I needed to play a physical game. And I think a good game for me is where I know that not that I had like a huge open ice hit or some hit that's going to make, the hit thing on the Jumbotron, but where I was a physical presence in the game. Our penalty kill, which I was always a big part of, put up a goose egg, so we didn't give up any power play goals. And we created offensive opportunities. And you're right, like we wanted to score, our line wanted to score on a lot of nights, but I think if we were creating offense, making the best lines that we were playing against defend and spend a lot more time in their zone, we knew that we were giving ourselves an opportunity to win the game. And but I can tell you where I took, and I shared it with, whether it was Dixon, Warden, Baclav, Verada, whoever my line mates were, we got most proud when we saw teams like, for example, one time in Anaheim, we were doing a number on Korean Selanne, and finally they had to split them up because they weren't getting any offense, because they had to split those guys up so that they wouldn't have our line against both of them at the same time. So, it's a lot of little things like that. I think that, summarize what I feel a good game is for me and was for our line as well.
You were a key guy on 2 Stanley Cup final teams, one in Buffalo and the one in Edmonton. Was one, I say better? I mean, man, you're in the final. Like, was one more satisfying than the other?
Yeah, I think the Edmonton one for me was more satisfying. It was a really, really frustrating and difficult season for me. I got from the island and had a tough couple years coming off of shoulder and ACL surgery, and then we have a whole year off with the lockout, and then I get traded to Edmonton, and I just wasn't in great shape. And the start of that season was a struggle, and a lot of credit to Kevin Lowe and Craig McTavish, and we had dialogue nonstop. They stuck with me, and then finally Olympic break in that year. I worked extremely hard with Kelly Buchberger, and he got my butt like in really, really good shape. And so for me, that was a bigger one for me, because it was a redemption year for me to kind of pick up for maybe which could have been one of the worst years of my career into a really strong finish and a really good, strong push in the playoffs. And, to get to game 7 and have an opportunity to win the Stanley Cup in a game. In Buffalo, we didn't have an opportunity to win the Stanley Cup in any game we were in. In Edmonton, we did. And it was a special moment, but also equally heartbreaking.
Yeah, no question. Mike, we'll let you go with this. I mean, not to look too far into your future here, but, it seems that you have a passion for coaching. Again, when you jumped onto the podcast, we talked about your role with the Buffalo Junior Sabres. So if you can look into a crystal ball, I mean, where do you see yourself in whatever the time frame is? Do you see yourself as a head coach? Do you see yourself more on the management side? What's the NHL future for Mike Peca now?
I think me, like even now, like running practices and like I love being on the ice. I love being on a bench. If hockey is a part of my future here moving forward, it's definitely in coaching. managing's fun. I mean, at this level, I think it's a difficult job. There's no doubt. But for me, the game, the most special thing about the game from when I was 9 years old till today, actually, is all about the relationships. For me, it's all about those relationships. And I just feel like when you're done playing, coaching gives you that next best opportunity to just continue with those relationships and, try and get, somebody to be the best version of themselves. And it's a lot of fun.
All right. Well, enjoy the ride. You're a good man for joining us here on the podcast today. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks, guys. Great to be with you.
All the best to you, Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Ray.
Man, Ray, I'm thinking as Mike Peca is talking about, I guess it was returning to Winnipeg, and I feel like it was in mid-March, if that's the game that he's talking about, because that was the rematch after that February hit, the Canucks against the Winnipeg Jets, and they hit, of course, Peca on Selanne. But, you have to remember those days in dressing rooms where he's right. I mean, there's no Twitter, there's no social media. I mean, you're not tuned in to what's going on. You arrive in a city on the road and you throw the radio on and you happen to listen to what the radio guys are talking about. And more importantly, you're tuning in for the rock and the music and getting pumped up.
Well, nobody had their own music. I mean, eventually we started bringing around, the big players, and somebody would be in charge of making discs. Of course, you could make music like that. And like when I was with the Rangers, Brian Leach was in charge of all of that. He would make all the music in the room. And so if you didn't like the playlist, the guys would be on Leachy a little bit of a sidetrack. So I get there and there's this one song, it's on a few tapes or a few discs. And I'm like, who is that? And it would always play like at some point in the pregame, like early in the pregame. And it was Barry White. And I'd go, who is this? Because I loved it. And he told me about 4 times, Barry White. And finally he goes, he doesn't have a greatest hits album. It's the only song that he had. Like that's how out of music I am. But you'd go in and you'd have the local radio station. Like Michael said, you'd have the rock station. That was it. And you'd listen. But I can't imagine sitting in the room and listening to the 2 DJs going, yeah, come down and we're going to kill Michael Peca today. You're like, oh, that's unfortunate.
Man, he has the mind of a coach, though, doesn't he? When you guys are talking about how he's going to coach the experience of the Washington Capitals in faceoffs and all of those things, that's what made me ask the last question. But what does your future look like? Because just listening to him talk about his passion on the ice, that's where he wants to be. He's not going to step on anyone's toes. He's going to pay his dues, but you do get the sense that he's got the mind for it, for sure.
Well, Ken Hitchcock's one of the greatest coaches in the history of the game. Michael Peca retires after a 4 or 5 goal season in Columbus, and they instantly want him to join the coaching staff. And so then he gets into coaching with the Junior Sabres and managing. And there's certain guys, Dregs, you look at them as players and they just look like a coach. Like if Ron Francis was coaching at one time in Pittsburgh, and I remember seeing him on the bench, he had his foot up on the bench, and I'm like, man, I just always see Ronnie as a manager.
Yeah.
Now I could see Joel Quenneville becoming a manager as well, even though maybe people that don't know him could never see that. I could see Joel as a manager. Dave Tippett, he was a coach. You just knew it. And I see Michael Peca as a coach.
All right, time for Throat Punch, Ray. I've got a 2-parter. Okay, so
then you got to lead off if it's a 2-parter. No,
yeah, it's a 2-parter. It's a 2-parter.
Or should I just give my little quick one here?
No, I'll do mine, and because yours actually matters. Neither one of mine matter. So I'm giving Mason Dreger, my son, the throat punch because as we talked about, got a pile of snow earlier this week. So I'm out there. It's not like it's 7 a.m. It's like 10:15 a.m. I've got the snowblower going. I'm shoveling. I mean, 90 minutes later, I come in and I'm covered in snow. And, he bounces up the stairs from sleep until 11:30 or whatever it was. And he goes, oh, lots of snow, eh? Yeah, there's lots of snow. And I did 2 face plants and smashed my elbow because there was ice underneath the snow on the sidewalk. And I literally did.
Come on.
I kid you not, I've got the snowblower, I'm going, and I hit an icy patch, and it's just, woo! It's like Daniel Berger at the AT&T. Did you see what was it, Berger? The bunker shot, and then went backwards, and all you can see is his feet above the green.
But he landed in a bunker.
Yeah, no, I landed square on my back and smashed my elbow. So that's my
must
fun.
Have been a joy. You must have been a joy.
Yeah, but maybe a titch more seriously. I'm a Vegas Golden Knights fan, so I'm just going to qualify it. In fact, on the quiz the other day, I said that I felt like they were the top Stanley Cup contender among the favorite teams. The other 2 knuckleheads, Dave Poulin and Jeff O'Neill, picked Tampa Bay Lightning, which is fine. I get it, defending Stanley Cup champs. I'm also a traditionalist, right? I'm okay with what happens in Europe. You know, the European flair, I understand it. I'm okay with Notre Dame and what happens in college sports when they try and jazz things up and all of that. There's a bit of a shtick. Man, these shiny gold helmets, they're not getting it done for me even a little bit. I'm distracted by it, and I'm surprised that it bugs me as much as it does, but it kind of does. Like, hockey is supposed to be that traditional, let's just go about our business. Let's all look the same and try and act the same way. All of that kind of stuff. Those gold helmets get my throat punch for this week.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you on the second one. The first one I get because it would be a little nice to get some help from your son, who, by the way, isn't 10.
No.
That, he should be out there shoveling the snow.
Yes.
The helmets, I hate them. I think they look cheesy and I don't like them at all. However, I like the change. I I know it's traditional, the sport's been traditional. We need to get out of the traditional stuff. It needs to be different. But those are ugly. Like, really good designers can have a bad day. And that was a bad day. Now, my throat punch is not for anyone in particular, but just the circumstance, I guess. So Buffalo gets shut down for a couple of weeks because New Jersey had some positives. They played a couple of games through really no fault of their own. They get shut down for a couple of weeks. That bleeds into Minnesota. Minnesota gets shut down as well for a couple of weeks. Those teams play their first games out of quarantine. Buffalo gets shut out without a shot on goal in the third period in their first game against the Islanders. And then they lose 3-1 the second game. They score 1 goal in 2 games. Minnesota comes out of quarantine. They get shut out in LA. So the 3 games those teams come out of quarantine, they score a grand total of 1 goal. Man, I hate all of that. I really do.
All right, there you go. Throat punch candidates for this week. All right, Chris Abbott of Coolbet.co joins us for our weekly segment here on the Rain Dregs Hockey Podcast. And we're going to spend some time talking about the National Hockey League. And we've got Scott Tournament of Hearts right around the corner. Some interesting stuff there. Let's go back to the beginning of the week, Chris. Ottawa playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. And I'm surprised to learn that there wasn't a lot of activity going into the third period. Now, in fairness to the Ottawa Senators, the Toronto Maple Leafs had that game in hand, even though Nick Paul scores late in the second period. So I guess the gambling types out there had zero confidence that Ottawa was going to pull out the comeback.
No, not at all. I mean, our social media guys, after each period, when the live odds change, they'll post it, and that was the same thing they did at the end of the second period of that game. Like, LOL, if you want to get Ottawa now, they're 19-1, ha ha ha. But turns out, it would have been a great bet. Now, we had 0 people that I'm aware of come in and take that bet. I think if you made that bet, you'd be touting it on social media. So I have not seen anyone come in to claim the prize of being the great prognosticator. But that one was interesting from that point of view. But also, a lot of people would have had Toronto in their parlay tickets. So that was an unbelievable outcome for the sports books for Ottawa to come back. So we talk about for them to come back from the 4 goals for the first time in franchise history and all that. But from a sports betting perspective, it absolutely shook the landscape for a night as well.
Chris, I don't know if all our listeners know about the parlay stuff, but I hadn't even really thought of that. I had thought of this game just as the one-off of the game, but nobody or virtually nobody's going to take Ottawa to beat Toronto. That's just not going to happen. So people had their tickets busted all over the place, and they had to be sitting there already with the red check mark. The old curse, right? Oh yeah, this is a lock. I'm a win here. And then all of a sudden you get punched straight in the nose on it. That had to happen a ton.
So I was one of those people, right? I had, so what happened Saturday night, I had a a fade the Senators, fade the Canucks parlay, which they both won. And I said, well, all right, I'm doubling down the next time they play because they're both not going to win again. And I see the Leafs are out to a big lead. I'm like, all right, check. I've got that done. Now I just need Calgary to win, and I'm good. Turns out Calgary did it the difficult way in overtime that night against Vancouver. But Ottawa busted that ticket. So I'm now sitting in a position where some people talk about the martingale method of betting roulette, for example, where if you lose, you double down until you win. So I lost my 1 unit bet. So then I doubled down 2 units the other night. Now tonight I'm going for a third time to fade Ottawa and Vancouver. And so now it's 4 units, right? So in exponents. So I really need those favorites to win tonight.
Well, I was doing the game and Dregs was doing it in studio. And even when it went to 5-2, not for a second did I think the game was in danger. Even when it went to 5-3, I mean, it was only a minute later, but I was like, I know there's lots of time, but they'll probably be all right.
Yeah.
Nope.
And I think a lot of people felt that way, right? And it's just one of those games. And I've heard a lot of people, and Ray, you probably have said this too since that result. It's one game on the schedule. The sky isn't falling. If they play that game 10 times, Toronto wins at 9. But for that one night, it certainly was a little bit of a disruptor.
All right, let's shift to the Scott Tournament of Hearts. Curling is a big part of what you do at coolbet.co this time of year. Scott Tournament of Hearts coming up on the weekend. What should we be looking for there?
Well, you know what? It's an event that's near and dear to us because there's nothing more wholesome than the curling tournaments, the Scotties and the Brier each year, and you get to spend a full month really with Vic Rauter in your ear, and that's a beautiful thing. So, but we, because we like to focus on Canada, because we like to focus on the Canadian centric events, this one's important. And also, we had just launched, over a year ago here when the Scotties and Brier came around, and it was a big event for us, and people really seemed to like that, that they could get something that was a little more specific, a little more local to Canada. And we're seeing that again already. Rachel Holman has so far taken the most betting action to win the event, which is interesting because Rachel has another wrinkle this year. She's 7 months pregnant. We saw Jennifer Jones very pregnant, Sandra Smirler very pregnant, have success in the past. So be interesting to see how Rachel Holman's team handles that. But also you've got, speaking of Jennifer Jones, she's right there getting betting action. Interestingly, the favorite, who is Team Canada's Carrie Anderson, she's not getting as much love in the futures market right now. So I think some people are looking for an upset and for her not to defend her title.
All right, what about NBA, buddy? The Raptors aren't playing in Toronto. That's far from a news flash. But I'm wondering, from a Canadian perspective, how much does that influence, what the normal NBA Toronto Raptor consumer would be willing to put money on?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a little bit of a downtick in NBA interest because, obviously in Toronto, where most of the people are in Canada, and of course the biggest NBA fans. there's a little less of a buzz around the Raptors. Now, it doesn't help either that they haven't been having the best year. Right. But one trend that people have jumped on with the Raptors is they consistently go over the total, and they did so again in their win against Milwaukee this week. So that's one thing that people are betting on. Even if you're not paying too close attention to the NBA, take over the points total with the Raptors. Most nights you're usually in pretty good shape.
Good stuff. We appreciate your time as always, Chris. Have another great week.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care. Talk soon.
Thanks, Chris.
Got a lot of positive feedback, Ray, from how I sang the intro to Ask Ray and Dregs Anything in the last episode.
I can't imagine it was positive. I really can't. It didn't sound very good.
No, it didn't. It was clearly a ripoff of James Duthie, who sings, what's bugging Ray? What's bugging Ray? Everybody's wondering what's bugging Ray. Ask Ray and Dregs Anything. You can fire your questions to us on Twitter at Ray and Dregs or the website, rayanddregs.com. From Greg, should the Anaheim Ducks call up Trevor Zegras? Now, Greg is seeing Tim Stützle and Kaliev playing for struggling teams, and he's wondering if the Ducks are doing the right thing by being patient and leaving him in San Diego with the Gulls.
I guess the only negative I can think of is that you call a really fine prospect up to a team that can't score, and then he doesn't score, and he starts to lose his own confidence and ability to make a play. And so he doesn't even want to try to make a play after a while. That would be the only negative. Skill-wise, I think Trevor Zegras is clearly ready to play. Anaheim's is a little bit of a mess. I mean, they don't generate much, and Zegras is a generator. I don't imagine he'll be out of the picture for very long.
Okay, I've got a couple of out there Vancouver Canucks questions. Are you ready?
Oh yeah, Canucks Twitter, baby.
This one from Jim. Do you think it's possible to convert Jake Virtanen into a defenseman? Because he's a great skater and he has good size.
No.
Okay.
There are times I really wonder, seriously, it's a curious question, right? Like somebody's curious about it.
And I'm glad you asked it, to be fair, because it is.
Yes, that's my point. Is like there's nothing wrong with it.
No.
However, I don't think people quite understand how good the NHL is. Like sometimes I think you don't quite understand that. Jake Virtanen's 24. He's been playing hockey for probably 18 or 19 years. He's played forward the whole time. You can't just become a defenseman. He doesn't skate backwards. He doesn't know how to read a play. He wouldn't know how to defend. Like, you could say, yeah, we could teach him all that. How long is that going to take?
Yeah.
People are out of rope for Virtanen in Vancouver, I would say. He just can't seem to get a foothold here. All
right. Do you want another Vancouver question, or should we?
Well, you got it teed up. You're giggling away. You want to ask it. I can tell.
Well, I hesitate only because we talked about Francesco Aquilini earlier, right, in the pod,
sure.
and the support that he threw at Travis Green and Jim Benning. All right. Well, I'm going to summarize this question from Wally because Wally has had enough of everything that appears to be the Vancouver Canucks and the rebuild and all of this stuff. So he says, in light of the fact that ownership is saying they're staying the course, the GM and coach, and this is why I love the question. If Ray was the president of hockey operations, how would he fix this team and get this rebuild back on track?
Really? My view is that what they were starting to do was what they need to do. They don't have enough depth. They don't have enough prospects. They don't have enough draft picks. It's not as fast as people would like it to be. And they tried to jump the queue by signing some veterans that have done nothing but clog up their salary cap. That is not the way to do it. It's never going to be successful if they continue to try to do it like that. They have to look. It's great. Brock Besser, Elias Pettersson, Bo Horvat, Quinn Hughes, and then they made the trade for JT Miller. But taking Miller out of the equation, it's great. Those 4 picks, those are all first-round picks. Where are the second-round picks? Where are the third-round picks? You cannot build your team if you don't have those. The problem is if you have one of those every 2 years or one of them per year, you don't put enough chances in the pipeline for that to develop. You need more picks, which probably means culling some salary off the cap. That takes a little bit of time, but drafting and then the patience of developing. I don't see another way.
All right. One more from a longtime Rangers fan, Martin. And he's questioning the front office of the New York Rangers and where they're at in terms of building the Rangers back into a contender that can legitimately take a run at the Cup anytime soon. Do you, Ray, see enough building blocks and positive signs to get there, or do they again need to blow everything up?
No, but I'm glad you asked this question on the heels of the Canucks one. This is the problem with drafting and development. Drafting happens in one day. Development happens in an uneven pattern. Mm-hmm. So they have a bucket load of young players playing in their lineup. With that, and with that development comes the unpredictability, the ups and downs of what young players as they learn the league. And then you're hoping that your veteran players continue to perform. Like Zibanejad had a fabulous year last year. Last time I checked, he had 1 goal.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. However, you've got 2 relatively inexperienced goaltenders. You've got Adam Fox and Keandre Miller, who are 2 really big pieces of your future defense, but they're just learning the league. It's Fox's second year, Keandre's first year. And then up front, Lafreniere is the first pick in the draft. Like, you can't be sour on him yet. Mm-mm. I know he doesn't have the start that you'd like, but Capo Caco in his second year, he's starting to show some growth. The pieces are there. Unfortunately, the patience and the development part is there's no way to shortcut that.
No, and the Rangers are always a team that's in the big hunt, right? So if something ridiculous were to occur, like Crosby available, which isn't likely, Barkov unlikely, Eichel unlikely. I mean, that's the type of splash the New York Rangers would like to get involved.
Well, they just signed Panarin a year ago, right?
Yeah,
I mean, they went big on Panarin, and he's been fantastic for them.
Yeah. All right, buddy, we're going to wrap up another podcast here. Get ready for episode 11 next week. What's your week look like? What's big in the world?
A couple of Jets things. Jets games this week. Leafs in Calgary next Monday. So that'll be before the pod. And then kids out here are at soccer. They're in Vancouver. They're at practices. So busy week shuttling the kids around and watching the games.
Don't forget, the clock is ticking. You've got a big milestone birthday that you need to focus on.
Next month I've put that in the chart. That is going to require some attention.
It does.
Drop the ball.
No, it requires attention, but I'm going to do you this solid. We're not going to talk about it again. We're going to wait until after the fact, because Cammie is one of our loyal listeners, and yes. I know it's going to be spectacular. Like, this is going to be one of those birthdays that we talk about for maybe the next 25 years. That's how good this is going to be, because I know the level of preparation that you've invested. So let's not give out any secrets. Let's just not talk about it.
Nothing. It's going to be tough to be spectacular given these days, but I'm working on a few things that trying to put it all together, Dregs, pull it all together.
Have you got a team? You've got an assembled team?
Yeah, my daughter-in-law. She's my team. Manroop can organize anything. She's the best. Now, what do you got going?
Very similar. Sounds very similar. I've got a couple of games. We've got Winnipeg Jets as we're recording this on Wednesday. We've got Jets Oilers tonight. We've got insider trading. We've got lots of stuff to do on Friday. Monday, we've got the Leafs game. So pretty quiet weekend. Might go ice fishing this weekend. Lake Simcoe. Mason Dreger, I'm taking the throat punch away, provided he doesn't do anything else dumb in the next few days. Might go ice fishing with young Mason.
Yeah, see, I'm not a fisherman, and so going out in the cold really doesn't fit for me.
But you know what? It's borderline idiot proof now. Like you rent these huts, they shuttle you to the huts. The huts are warm because they've got electric furnaces. I mean, honestly, the only thing you have to try and do is catch the fish, and everything else is done for you.
Okay, so hang on. So now you're in the hut.
Yeah.
They've got the hut warm. They got a place to sit, and they got a hole in the ground or in the water. So you say try and catch the fish. You just put your line in the water. It's not like you can even move around.
No.
Oh, that sounds fantastic. Yeah, what a great day.
I'll send you a picture. Well, I mean, if we go, we're ironing out the details. There's some logistical stuff with COVID and everything else that has to get sorted through. But anyway, brother, thanks.
Enjoy your week. Be safe.
Yeah, have a good one. Huge shout out to our partners who make the podcast possible. That's Coolbet.co, the free-to-play sports and casino games website. Hey, if you're interested in partnering with us here on Ray and Dregs, you can reach out to us on our website, rayanddregs.com. That's episode 10. We're feverishly preparing episode 11. In the meantime, enjoy episode 10 and be safe, everybody.